Hello and welcome to Fit to Build Academy, the introductory workshop, the Building Roadmap. This introductory lesson is about showing you the high-level steps that you need to take in your home building project. A roadmap that helps you understand what to expect in your project and explain to you the common steps that every project has, no matter the complexity. We'll start with a high-level view from the perspective of 30,000 feet high, so you can see the big picture and why you need to be able to see from beginning to the end. At this stage, you can't quite make out all the winding roads that you need to take to get to the final destination, which of course is your brand new home or renovation. And having this 30,000 foot view is critical in allowing you to create a plan to begin and to take the right first step. And note that I stated the right first step. The wrong first step can lead you to disaster, which is unfortunately all too common. So this roadmap is all about showing you the high-level steps you need to take so that the trip is smooth and with no U-turns along the way. And like any major project or even a road trip, you need to plan it out first so that you know where you are heading and what the final destination is. And as we get further in the program, we will spend time digging deeper into this in the next modules and lessons, and we'll dive in and dissect each step in detail. So then from a 30,000 foot view, we'll go down to a 10,000 foot view to see more roads that you need to take, and then getting down to a 5,000 foot view where you will start to begin to see the roads and paths in detail, and you will see the possible pitfalls that you will be able to avoid. If you think about when you plan a long road trip in your car, off to a beach or somewhere where the sun is shining, you've got your music on, you've got your favourite tunes on the radio, you've got Spotify on, you are cruising down the road and enjoying the ride because you know that you have everything planned. You've written the list of everything you need to do before you leave. You've got the car serviced to eliminate mechanical problems. You've been planning the route by choosing the highway or the back roads. You've booked some accommodation along the way and you've packed all the equipment you need and have decided on the fun activities that you want to do. Doing this planning is natural and makes sense because it makes the trip smoother and less stressful than if you had no plan, no idea of the road and no accommodation booked. Now it may be your personality though to just take off, get on the road, wing it and be happy to fly by the seat of your pants. Happy to be a bit stressed about taking a few wrong turns on the way or the possibility you won't have a place to stay. And that's what makes you feel alive. But winging it on a road trip is completely different to winging it when you're building your home. The biggest issue you could find when you're on a road trip is a car breakdown or possibly sleeping rough. But when you wing it when you're building your home, it's a terrible idea. The potential for financial ruin, emotional stress is pretty limited on a car trip. But building your home without properly planning is a recipe for disaster, and I don't say that mildly. It really is. And even if you think you know what to do, chances are you don't know the full story because you've only been looking from a 30,000 foot view and have no understanding of the detail that you need to address before you even start. And to risk using another metaphor, say you want to bake some chocolate chip cookies. You know what the outcome needs to be. Nice, round and plump cookies that are beautiful and crunchy or even chewy. You know you need the ingredients. You know that you need to mix them all together and then bake them. But how do you know when to mix the butter, the sugar, the eggs? Or when to turn the oven on and when to remove the cookies from the oven? You certainly don't put the choc chips in after the cookies have been baked. But all this is described in the recipe in a step-by-step process. So you mix the butter, the sugar, you add the egg, you mix in the flour, you add the chocolate chips, put the cookies on a tray and then put them in the oven and you take them after the designated time. You need to follow the process so they come out edible. And building a new home or renovating an existing house is something that needs to be clearly thought out from beginning to end. You just can't wing it. You need to follow the recipe. But you can't follow the recipe if you only know half the steps that you need to take. And the frustrating part for the homeowner is that there isn't really any professional in the industry that will give you the recipe and the step-by-step plan to go from beginning to end. Not the architect, not the builder. They are only responsible for the design or the build respectively. They might give you a broad outline, but they won't provide any detail unless it relates specifically to their expertise. So how do you get the recipe? How do you work out the steps? Well, that's exactly what we will break down for you today. The high-level steps to take to give you a clear vision and a framework to follow so you get to the destination quickly and without any of those frustrating and costly roadblocks and U-turns. So taking a bird's eye view from 30,000 foot, the major steps or phases that each project has are these 4 steps, which can be broken down into more and more steps that need to be completed to get to the destination. And depending on your project and the size or complexity, you may be able to skip some or brush over some, but if you have a complex project, you will need to follow these steps at a minimum, so every base is covered. So let's have a look at these now. Step 1, the pre-planning, pre-design and planning phase. And this is where the owner decides it's time to build, and they need to be clear on why. And these questions need to be asked and answered in detail. Why am I building? Why am I renovating? Why am I remodeling my home? What is it that I'm trying to achieve? And how will I achieve it? And how will I finance it? The pre-design stage is where all that planning happens. The idea, the design brief, the budget setting, the planning for the duration of the project and determining who you will work with, whether that's an architect or a draftsman or a custom builder or a renovation builder, or you're going to do it as an owner builder. These are the things you need to think about and understand before you jump too far into the project. The biggest cost savings are made at this stage, but unfortunately, you can't know that now. But if you do it wrong, you will certainly discover that you could have saved thousands. Phase 2 or step 2 is the design stage, where the architect or designer provides a concept design for overall approval and then proceeds to detailed drawings. This is completed on the back of you providing the designer with a brief and detailing your vision so they understand what you are trying to achieve. So the brief you provide your designer is really important, and it needs to address all of those questions. What, why, and how will I achieve what I want? And this becomes represented in plan form from concept design through design development and flows through to the detailed construction drawings after much discussion and revision with you as the client. Step 3 or phase 3 is the tender or bid phase, where the client or designer selects the builder to price the design and then from there selects the preferred builder when they're ready. And only when the design is complete can that quote be sought. You can seek estimates during the design phase to check that the design is tracking to your budget. And we highly recommend that if there's one thing that you take out of this little introduction workshop, it's to get price checks along the way before you spend too much money on the design. And what I mean is, get a builder to estimate a price at concept stage and design development stage so that you can see that the design is meeting the budget before you spend the final chunk of cash on the architect for construction documents. But a real and accurate tender price can only be sought after the design is 100% completed, when we discuss this in the traditional design, bid and build methodology. And look, there are other methodologies, other project delivery methods such as design and construct or cost plus even. that we'll talk about as we go through the modules of the course. But to keep this as uncomplicated as possible for now, this is the way it happens in this traditional design, bid and build delivery. And when the drawings are finished, that means everything: the architectural drawings, the structural drawings, the energy reports, the geotechnical report. It means the land survey is completed, and depending on your project complexity, you might have landscaping, you might have civil drawings for stormwater design, you might have mechanical drawings, you might have electrical drawings. All of these documents are needed for the real price to be submitted. In a project such as townhouses development, tender documents can be in the hundreds of pages. For example, I once built 2 townhouses that had 3 contracts to sign, one for me, one for the client, and one copy for the architect. It took me 3 hours to sign and initial every page of that contract. Needless to say, I had a sore hand at the end. So it can be complicated, but it doesn't always have to be. Phase 4 or step 4 is the construction phase, where the builder commences and completes the project and on time and then budget. Now I say that because that's what everybody aims for, but doesn't always happen. So the design on paper becomes a building on the ground, and this is the most complicated part of the project and the most time consuming. There will be many decisions that you will need to make through this. Even with fully completed designs, issues can arise that have not been anticipated by you or the architect or designer or whoever you're working with. So be fully prepared for the builder to ring you each day with questions. And the key to this stage is to select a builder that you can work with. And in future models, we'll detail how you can find a builder that you can work with that meets your needs and meets your desires and meets your personality and how you want to work. So let's delve a little deeper. So we go from 30,000 feet view, let's jump into about a 10,000 foot view and look at some detail. And the step 1 pre-design planning phase. Step 1, why? The idea. The idea, which we've touched on already, it's the owner decides it's time to build, and you need to be clear on why they are building or renovating. Making sure that you and your partner are clear and on the same page is critical. I've been in so many meetings where the husband or wife starts discussing what they want and what the plans are, only to have the partner shaking the head saying, "That's news to me. We haven't discussed that." And believe me, it happens. And not just at this early stage, it still happens after the design is complete. So be clear on the following questions before you spend any money with anyone. Why am I building? Why am I renovating? Why am I remodeling my home? What is it that I'm trying to achieve? How am I trying to achieve it? And how will I finance it? The owner defines what they want by detailing clearly in written and pictorial form what you would like in the home. This is the most important starting document and should be clear on everything regarding the design, the building shape, and the building form. And the designer will ask plenty of questions and will help refine the brief into a working document so that you can use it to move forward. And I'm a massive fan of you as the client explaining why you are building to the design team. Because the most important person that you need to share that with is your architect or designer. They need to understand why you're doing this. They need to understand why you're building or why you're renovating or why you are remodeling. It might be because you've got a growing family or your home at the moment is in poor condition and needs to be upgraded. It may be those things, and that can and will influence design. It influences cost and the like. So being clear and detailed is super important and critical. Step number 2 is budgeting. Setting a realistic budget is really important. Often people set a budget without any fundamental understanding of what they will need to pay for. Making sure you get a realistic budget and making sure your budget matches your design is super important. Countless stories can be told about a budget that was based on wrong or inappropriate advice. Advice picked up from a website or making assumptions based on other builders' publicly listed build costs. For example, the classic mistake is using a volume home builder or a production home builder's square metre rate to set your building budget. And if you are custom building or renovating, it's never going to align. There are different cost assumptions depending on what your project requires. Renovating is more expensive per square metre than building new. The building will be designed differently. The foundations will be designed differently. The access will be different for the builder. So it will cost them more to build. So you need to make sure that when you're budgeting, you are budgeting the correct amounts for the correct type of construction. You also need to understand what you can afford to spend. And often people set a budget and then have so little understanding of what can be done for the budget that they proceed to make design decisions that will completely blow the budget. Importantly, the budget has to cover soft costs and hard costs. Soft costs being all non-building related items such as design, local council fees, landscaping even. And the hard costs are all the actual building costs. And I tell you what, these non-building costs can add up very quickly, and the $300,000 or whatever your budget is that you had for building can quickly end up a lot more than what you had in mind. You can spend more than what you had in mind. If you run out of money at the end, you will find that you have to skimp on either building works or building finishes, or the landscaping just doesn't get done. And if you drive around any estate, you see a lot of that. You see landscaping not done. And as a builder, in my experience, I rarely get told the client's exact budget because of a client's fear of the builder pricing that exact price. Now, that's not an unwarranted fear, but it does make it difficult to get the right price and the right builder if you are telling them some lowball number. But guess what? The builder already knows that that's what you're doing, right? Because he sees it over and over. It's not a new tactic. The builder has to price what's in front of him, not what he thinks the number should be. But often what happens is the homeowner's build budget is not in keeping with the quality and scope that the design requires. And a good builder can look at the design and do a guesstimate cost really quickly. If you have chosen someone with experience in your style of build, they will have similar examples for a quick, ready reckoner price. And because of this experience, they can then assess whether your stated budget is enough or not. And importantly, a lot of builders don't like to waste their own time. So if your budget is sitting below where the builder thinks the price should be, he's not going to price it. He is not going to waste his time. So you need to be mindful that you need to be realistic. You need to be honest with the people that you are asking to work with you. And if you are not, you won't attract the best builder. You just won't. You will attract someone that has poor management techniques, poor processes, and poor estimating capabilities. And this results or can result in a poor experience overall. Step number 3 is planning and goal setting. And this is linked inherently to step number 1. Be clear on what the idea is, and then planning to meet that idea is really important. Clearly listing what is a must-have and what is a want will allow you to be flexible with your design, and knowing what you want versus what you need allows you to revise your design expectations when costs start to exceed your budget, which is incredibly common. All your future decisions are based on this planning, and is as integral as step number 1. All your future costs will come out of the realistic and detailed planning. This is where you set up for disaster or success. Step number 4, finance. This is the emotional and financial decision. Make sure that you don't overcapitalize on what you're building. Make sure that what you are building is suitable for the neighborhood and will be sellable in the future. The houses that are a bit too quirky are the ones that are hard to sell later. But that may not matter if this is a 20-year home for you. Understand and set out how you're going to finance it. Will it be through equity in your existing home? Do you have cash in the bank? Are you going to borrow? Do you have a rich uncle that's going to lend you some money? You need to determine how you are going to pay for this before you begin. And you need to determine how much you can actually afford. What jobs do you have now that will provide the cash flow for this to pay off a mortgage or pay off some financier? Are you a full-time employee or part-time? That matters when it comes to dealing with banks. Do you have a business, and what is the turnover and profit been over the last 2 years? The banks will ask all about that. I well know, I've just been through that process. What are the cash flow needs of that business? What will that impact on your home loan? If you do have a business, home loans become more and more difficult with many more hoops to jump through. Your business financials will be assessed alongside your personal. Any outstanding debts or defaults will also be a factor. And step number 5, in pre-planning, you need to find a designer. Is it going to be an architect? Or is it going to be a building designer? Or is it going to be a draftsman? And you need to choose based on your budget and the design outcomes that are required. And these people will be who you convey your idea and your wants and your needs to. And they will then transform this into a concept for you to consider. So finding a person you can connect with and have respect for is the key. There is also a big difference in what a draftsperson, a building designer, and an architect will provide in terms of costs and scope of design. And it's important to understand what these differences are to be able to make a clear decision of which way you want or need to go. And sometimes your budget determines that straight away. If your budget's low, typically you're not going to be able to afford an architect. If you're spending $250,000 or $300,000, there's little value in going to an architect because their fees will take up too much of your actual budget for your project. So you then start looking at the cheaper alternative, which might be a building designer, but it might also be simply a draftsman. And these are important decisions that need to be taken seriously and not just land upon the first one that's available. The designer needs to be someone you can trust and work with to deliver your dream. Next stage on the home building roadmap is the design phase. The design phase. This is the phase of the project that is the most exciting. It's where your idea and your vision starts to take shape, and the building form, which is when the dream starts to become reality. You've done away with the endless researching, the budget planning, and searching for a bank that will lend you the cash. And generally now, this is where you're at. These are the steps that you need to follow. The fun bit. Step number 1 is the concept design. And this is literally the stage where the designer takes your ideas, understands your vision and why you are building, and starts to put that into plan form. Your verbal descriptions become rectangles, triangles, curves. If you've got plenty of money, you'll have curves. And that all is developed onto a piece of paper. And then you get this initial design for your approval based on your brief. So in this stage, you get the opportunity to review, rearrange, discuss, and have the design refined so that the design is what you want. And once this occurs a couple of times, the homeowner will need to sign off on the design so that the next stage of design can be commenced. And step number 2, which is design development, where the concept design is approved and the finer details are being developed. Now the architect or designer will develop the approved concept designs and provide documentation to explain it to the client and coordinate the work of specialist consultants like a structural engineer or electrical engineer or civil engineer or energy consultants. A schedule of the preferred finishes will start to be developed, and the developed design will be reviewed against the budget and coordinate and prepare an updated estimated cost of the works. This estimate can be the first time the design is costed against budget, or second if you did a quick check at concept stage. Step number 3 is the construction plans, where all of the engineering and consultants' details are integrated into the architectural plans and other plans. During this stage, the architect will prepare the drawings and specifications that will be used for construction. This is where the documents really get into the nitty-gritty and into the detail. All of those documents will be used to call tenders or bids from builders, and the builder subsequently will use he will issue these to his subcontractors to price. These drawings need to detail all of the specific items that are required by the owner, including sizes of rooms, windows, ceiling heights, wall thicknesses, type of flooring, type of glazing, all the cabinets for the kitchen and wet areas, etc., etc. The supporting documents from the engineer will detail the structure and the sizes of timber, the sizes of steel beams, and the sizes of posts and the like. The supporting schedules of finishes and fixtures will detail the type of tiles, the colour and type of paint, the type of flooring, timber, concrete, tiles, and the fixture schedule will detail the taps, the sinks, the basins, the bath, the oven, the dishwasher, etc. All of these items need to be decided upon, so the next users of the plans, the builder and the subcontractors, have a full and complete understanding of what is required to be priced and therefore built. And step number 4 is obtaining the building permit. All of that documentation is also required for the building surveyor or certifier to review and approve. Don't be surprised if there are questions raised at this point by the building surveyor. This is his or her job, and you want them to be thorough to ensure your design complies with all the relevant building codes and standards. This is an important part of the process, as without approval, you cannot commence any building works. And these building surveyors in recent times have become like a god. If they say you can't do it, you can't do it. Why? Because they are the gatekeeper to the legislation, to the acts of Parliament, to the building codes, and to the building standards that govern the way buildings must be built. And they are heavily scrutinised as the authority that signs off the design. Now, importantly, you can only go so far in getting the building permit. Why? Because a residential build requires a builder to provide domestic building insurance. This is government mandated and required before the building surveyor will provide the permit. So you can progress as far as possible with the building surveyor. You can have all of the design approved, you can have all of that in place, but until you decide on who the builder is and sign the contract, you can't get your building permit. So you need to do the following. Sign up a builder, sign the contract. He will then provide you with the insurance. Then you supply that to the building surveyor. Then the building surveyor gives you your building permit. It sounds a little bit backward, but the insurance is the last item that you need to get the permit, and you need the builder in place for that. The home building roadmap, step 3, the tender phase. It's often overlooked as to how important this step really is. It is absolutely paramount to send the correct and total documentation to the builder to price the project. What you send to the builder to price will be what you receive in a quotation. There is no room for guessing or letting assumptions be made. If you do that, you leave yourself open to confusion and worse, things that you think are in the builder's price but are not. It is a skill to understand what the builder has included and excluded. You cannot assume that everything is included if it is not detailed or not provided. After all, the builder has not been part of the overall process until this point. So all that knowledge that you and the designer have is not available to the builder. All he can do is act on the documents that you provide. It's up to you to ensure that everything is included. So let's go and have a look at step 1. You need to find builders, and you need to research suitable builders and request that they tender. Now, finding the right builder is incredibly important. And usually people rely upon recommendations from friends, family, or a designer or an architect. Sometimes the builder is working in your neighbourhood and you employ them from there. But you need to take the time to really assess the type of builder you want to work with. And also important is to choose a builder that has experience on a project similar to yours. So for example, you shouldn't choose a new home builder if you are completing a complex renovation, because they are two different types of builders with two different ways of operating and two different ways of pricing. I have developed a set of structured questions that you as the owner can follow before you go searching for a builder. These questions will send you in the direction of the right builder for you, not just any guy from down the street or anyone recommended from friends and family. And on top of that, I've developed a well-structured and detailed series of questions that I send to any prospective builder before we send documents to them. After all, what you want here is cooperation and initial trust from someone you don't know, and they don't know you. Step number 2 is you compile the documents. You gather together all of the documents required for an accurate build price and issue to all the selected builders. I suggest that you go to a maximum of 4 builders. If you find that after you've been to 4 and you have to go to more builders, it means that you have a disconnect between your design and your budget. You have a problem. Here's an example. I've just spoken to a client today, or potential client, that has a budget of $2.8 million for his project. My initial price to him was $3.1 million. He has spent 12 months looking for another builder to get the $2.8 million price. He can't achieve his project because his design does not meet what his budget is. He has to change his budget or redesign completely. So if you find you're shopping around, it's not the builders that are the issue, it's your design not meeting your budget. And make sure you send the same documents to every builder. At this stage, you really should include a copy of the preferred contract terms and conditions if you have them. Now, if you're working with an architect, you'll be able to do that. If not, typically what happens is that a builder will provide you with an industry-based contract for use on the project. So depending on the build strategy you employ, the architect will manage the contract administration, or you will. If you find you are managing the contract, it's likely that you will have an industry-based contract. But like I said at the design construction documentation stage, you need to make sure you compile all of the documents together and send to the builder. He can only price what you have provided, and if assumptions are to be made, that's where the biggest problems start to occur. Because if you do not review the builder's tender submission letter of offer properly, you will find that you could sign a contract for an amount that you are happy with, but it may not include everything you want in the home. And that's not a nice thing to discover after you have signed the contract and work has started on site. And step number 3 is answering questions from the builder. The builder will have a list of questions because they will find inconsistencies in your documents. So you need to be prepared for it. Each subcontractor that gets the drawings from the builders will look in detail at what he has to quote. His detailed look will be more thorough than yours because he has a deeper understanding of what is required in his scope of works. And that's okay. You want questions because ultimately it means that you will get the right price for your project. And understand that your architectural documents won't be perfect. And what I found over the years is that the people that find the mistakes are the people who will actually build it. So your plumber, your electrician, your carpenters, your structural steel manufacturer, your roofers, your window manufacturers, they're the ones that will find the inconsistency because they are diving down into the detail of their specific trade. The builder at this point is taking the 30,000 foot view. He's sending everything out to his trade so that they can take the 5,000 foot detailed view and they can look at their scope. Then the builder has to coordinate all of that. Now, answering the builder's questions can be incredibly tedious, but it is really important, and no matter how much detail you include in the plans and specs, there will always be areas of confusion or an error or conflicting information on the documents. And this happens when a project is rushed, the designers are lazy, or simply not checked properly. And you will find, and I have found, that happens on every single project. There's always something that comes up. You just need to make sure that you have the right mindset and be prepared to answer the questions. Step number 4 is shortlist and interview your builders. Interviewing the builders after they have submitted the price is your chance to ask lots of questions to understand how they've priced, what they have priced, and whether they have included everything. Go through the quote, line by line, get them to tell you what documents they have priced against. You never know, maybe they did not see the landscaping drawing that had stormwater details, and that's going to be an extra cost. You need to be thorough, and sometimes you'll get a really detailed quote which enables deeper questioning, and sometimes you get minimal information. When you get minimal information, that should be a red flag to say that the builder is not being open and transparent, or he has not really priced this job properly. And what is he trying to hide? Or maybe he is simply unorganised and not put it together properly. If you see poor organisation at this stage, what is it likely to be like when he is actually building your house? Either way, this is a red flag for issues that you will encounter when you are actually building. Step number 5 is time to appoint that builder. Once you are satisfied that the builder has included everything in the price and you understand what has been left out and that you have to make allowance for that or you get them to include it. And once he's answered your questions and the builder fits with the type of person or organisation you want to work with, you can proceed to appoint them as your builder. You can do this via a formal letter of offer and suggest that a contract is drawn up. Now, as I've said before, we have some templates that will assist you with all of these steps, but also particularly in helping to find and appoint the preferred builder. And so we arrive at the construction phase. Woohoo! You've made it. But this is where the real work begins. You think the design phase has been hard? Well, wait till you start with a builder on site. But really, it's super exciting. You start seeing a slab on the ground and the frames going up and everything starts to take shape. I've seen countless Facebook posts of homeowners celebrating the fact the slab is poured. It's a significant milestone. But in reality, it can be the most complicated, confusing and stressful stage of the project, where many people will be involved and many decisions will need to be made during the course of the build, and often you will be asked to make them under time pressure from the builder. Like, we need to know what to do now. Now we need to know we have 5 guys on site that can't do anything until we get a direction from you. And of course, you are starting to make payments for tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it becomes very, very real. So let's have a look. Step number 1, sign the contract. Now, we've got a bit of crossover between tender and construction here. You could probably do this at the end of the tender phase, but really it's just the thing that needs to be done before you can actually build. So when you're satisfied that the builder has ticked all the boxes, it's time to sign the contract. And often these contracts are produced by the professional bodies that the builder belongs to, or even the architect, and specifically where I work, the government has legislation in place which details terms, conditions, and clauses that must be included as a protection to the consumer. And the reason for this government legislation is because historically, the contracts that the builder would have a homeowner sign was heavily weighted in the builder's favour. So all of the risk was on the client, and the payment terms and deposits were too far skewed to the builder. This used to result in the builder walking away and leaving the homeowner in the lurch. It's still possible for this to happen. However, it tends to happen to people that have not done the research and due diligence before signing up. However, there are a lot of consumer protections now that minimises this scenario. Now at this stage, you have signed the contract, so the builder can obtain the domestic building insurance that is required by law. Remember, we talked about that previously. The builder needs a signed copy of the contract to submit to the insurer, along with a completed application form which he will complete. The insurance normally issued within 24 hours, and a copy of the policy is supplied to the builder and the homeowner. This can then be issued to the building surveyor. Step number 2, site start. Now, this is where the builder takes possession of the property. Works commences. And this is the first time that workers arrive on site. And it's exciting. It's exciting. The first things to happen generally are protective perimeter fencing, amenities such as toilets or site sheds. And this is the moment called site possession, when the land or dwelling is no longer yours for the duration of the build. And that means that the builder is in control of what happens and who comes onto site. And that's really important for you to remember from our occupational health and safety perspective. You can't just walk onto the site anymore. Not after hours. You can't open up the fences and sneak your way in and have a look around. That's not permitted. So you need to be respectful of the builder's obligations for keeping everyone safe, even when they are not there. Step number 3. So the simplest way to describe the stages of construction are base stage, frame stage, lock-up stage, fix-out stage, and completion. The length and complexity of each of the stages depends entirely on the home design and size. There will be many times you will attend the site and marvel at what's happening, and there will be other times you'll be infuriated at the lack of progress. But that's par for the course, that's building. Things go well most of the time, sometimes they don't. And remember that builders have typically got more than one job on the go, so you need to understand that they may have another project that needs to get finished before yours. So your project may go on the back burner a little bit and then they'll come back. Frustrating? Yes, but also reality. So the base stage includes all in-ground works and flooring. So plumbing and electrical pipework is laid, the concrete slab is prepped and poured, or the timber floor is prepped, the bears and the joists laid out and completed. A progress payment is made at the completion of this stage. After the slab or timber floor has been completed, immediately after that the timber frame will commence. If a concrete slab, it won't be immediate, or shouldn't be immediate. There is some time to be allowed for the slab to cure and increase in strength. The timber frame is the completion of the structure, including walls and roof, timber and steel beams, and again, a progress claim is made at the completion of this stage. Lock-up stage is when the house is enclosed with the roof cladding on, the windows installed, the external cladding is in place, external doors and windows are installed even if they are temporary. A progress payment is made at the completion of this stage too. Fix out is when all interior finishes are completed, including any timber flooring, joinery, tiles, fixtures, fittings and doors, door jambs, architraves and skirtings. Again, a progress payment is typically made at this stage. And the final stage is when everything is finished, including all painting works and all appliances are installed, tested and operational. And when this is done, the homeowner and the builder complete a final walkthrough and identify any defective items. These defects that are identified should be written down and agreed to by the builder and the client. Depending on the contract, the builder will have a certain time frame to complete the defects before you make the final payment. And step number 5 is your defects liability period. This is a period of time allocated in your contract that the builder is obliged to come back and rectify any issues. It might be 3 months, it might be 6 months, it might be 12 months that the builder has to come back and fix any defects. Now these issues might be a leaky roof, a leaky shower, or a toilet, or cracks in the plaster, or doors not closing, or jamming. Importantly, things like dents in walls, scratches in paintwork that appear after if you've moved in that were not on the original defects list would not be something that the builder is liable for. So, to summarise the home building roadmap, it's simply a step-by-step process, a recipe if you like, that you need to understand and follow to get to the final destination, which of course is your dream home or renovation. And that means that you have to do one thing before the next. Learning and understanding the steps is the key to getting it right the first time. And understanding that each step or phase can be broken down into more and more detailed steps or tasks will ensure that you can be prepared for whatever crops up along the way and will be able to prevent a lot of the pitfalls that others encounter. Importantly, the first steps in the roadmap are the most critical. Making mistakes about budget and design or selecting the wrong designer and not understanding the impact or correlation between these can create a situation where you can make decisions based on wrong or incomplete information. This can send you off in a direction that can be difficult to come back from. And often these mistakes are costly and time consuming. So understanding the entire journey is vitally important to avoiding many of the headaches that can occur. And no doubt, when you start building on site, it's complicated and not everything can be foreseen. But being armed with more knowledge and understanding of how the process should work means that you will be more prepared and will make decisions with understanding and with confidence. Thanks for joining me on this lesson, and I trust that you now have a broader understanding of where you need to start and where you need to get to on your home building journey. Now, if you've liked what you've heard and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit to work with Fit to Build Academy, here's what I'd like you to do next. Head over to fittobuildacademy.com/call. That's fittobuildacademy.com/call and book an appointment to speak with our team. We'll get on the phone with you or a Zoom conference call for about 45 minutes and we'll get you crystal clear on 3 things. Number 1, why you are building and why it's important to you. Number 2, your ideal budget range and what you can achieve. And number 3, the exact strategy you need so you don't waste hundreds of hours starting in the wrong place. Remember that designing and building your home successfully does not happen by itself. You need expert guidance to make it happen, and it takes a lot of effort from you to drive that process. So, We'd love you to head over to fit2buildacademy.com/call, fit2buildacademy.com/call, and book an appointment to speak to our team, and we'll get on the phone with you for about 45 minutes. I'm Chris Huddart, and hopefully I will see you on a call.